Good Wednesday morning. Thanks for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Michelle Beck. Happening today, a bit of closure for families of the first responders killed in an ambush in Burnsville last year. The woman who admitted to buying the guns used in that shooting will be sentenced in federal court. Burnsville officers Paul Elmstrand and Matthew Ruge and firefighter paramedic Adam Finseth were killed. And this afternoon, we're expecting prosecutors to ask for 3.5 years of prison time for Ashley Deardahl. She pleaded guilty in January to buying the guns her boyfriend used to kill the 3 first responders. Her boyfriend, Shannon Gooden here, was a convicted felon, so he wasn't allowed to buy or have guns. As we wait on Deardahl's sentencing, we've already seen a big change because of all this. What was once a gross misdemeanor is now a felony offense, and that's buying a firearm for someone who's legally barred from owning one. But it goes without saying, nothing can bring back the loss that loved ones are feeling every day.
Before Matt died, he shared how much it bothered him that there was not a lot of support for first responders. These people that show up in very dangerous situations, not knowing what they're walking into. And since these heroes were killed, the support has been amazing. And I know that would make Matt very happy.
That was Officer Matthew Ruge's mother. And back to today, the court calendar says starting at 2 p.m., Deardahl will learn her fate. Developing this morning north of the Twin Cities, a shelter-in-place order is over and neighbors are safe after a tense situation in the city of Wyoming. For several hours late last night, people were told to stay in their homes near Forest Boulevard Trail and Goodview Avenue after authorities say an intoxicated man was threatening to harm himself and made statements to friends to shoot police. Just after 9 p.m., shots were fired from inside the man's home, and authorities say nearby homes were hit by bullets. There were reports the man tried to enter homes in the area, but police are telling us this morning there is no evidence that actually happened. For several hours, police tried to make contact with the man, even sending a drone through a window. Once they entered his home, authorities discovered he had died by suicide. No one else was hurt. This morning, we are closer to a special session. The governor and top lawmakers meeting within the past 24 hours to discuss gun laws after the Annunciation Church shooting. The governor is adamant the session will focus on banning assault weapons, especially after the Annunciation Church shooting 2 weeks ago. Also, the killing of Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark, in June. Republicans, meanwhile, say they plan to pursue 7 priorities surrounding mental health measures and more funding for school safety.
My commitment is that this violence cannot be normalized, that Minnesota needs to stand up.
There's got to be a lot of vetting of the language that comes forward, and will that actually solve some of the problems we're looking at?
It's unclear when Walz may call the special session, but both parties say they are optimistic about continuing talks this week, while acknowledging any policies will require bipartisan support in both the closely divided chambers. Happening right now, all 1,400 Teamsters 320 union workers are on strike at U of M campuses across the state, with Twin Cities workers joining last night.
If we don't get it, shut it down. If we don't get it, shut it down.
The workers hold service positions, including food, custodial, and maintenance jobs. The school website says some campus dining options are closed or limited. Also, cleaning is reduced. The U says it offered Teamsters a fair and equitable contract. The union says it's prepared to strike as long as it takes. Developing within the past 8 hours, officials in the state of Wyoming say they believe they found the body of a Minnesota man who's been missing for more than a year. 43-year-old Wesley Dobkins of St. Paul was last seen kayaking on Jackson Lake in Grand Teton National Park in June of last year. A nonprofit search and recovery team reportedly found a body on Sunday and recovered it from a depth of more than 400 feet yesterday. The coroner's office still has to identify the remains, but officials believe it's him. We're live in Washington, D.C. this morning, where President Trump's federal takeover of the city is set to expire today. However, that does not mean the National Guard will be leaving anytime soon. Last week, the Army extended its orders for the D.C. National Guard to stay in the district through November 30th. The president says homicides, car thefts, robberies, and violent crime are down since the federal takeover. And now he's looking to expand this approach to other cities.
This was one of the most unsafe cities in the country. Now it's as safe as there is in the country.
The president would love to do this in every Democrat-run city across the country.
Trump is warning Chicago, Philadelphia, and Baltimore could be next in line for that federal takeover. And today, President Trump is speaking out against Israel's strike on Hamas leadership inside Qatar, a U.S. ally. The president says the U.S. played no role in the attack, which targeted Hamas leaders considering a Trump administration ceasefire proposal to end the war in Gaza. Hamas says its negotiating team was unharmed. And now those ceasefire talks are in limbo, and family members of the hostages still held by the terrorist group fear for their loved ones. NBC's Alice Barr is in Washington with the details.
Hi there. The White House says the U.S. military, not Israel, notified it of the Israeli strike and that the U.S. then told Qatar, but not in time to stop the attack. President Trump overnight voicing frustration with another escalation in the Middle East, an Israeli attack targeting Hamas leadership inside Qatar, that Qatar called cowardly and illegal.
I was very unhappy about it, very unhappy about every aspect, and we got to get the hostages back. But I was very unhappy about the way that went down.
The president saying Israel did not warn him in advance. On social media, the president writing, quote, unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or America's goals. Hamas leaders were in Qatar because the U.S. asked for a neutral site for Gaza peace negotiations that Qatar has been mediating for months. Those talks now in limbo, devastating Israeli hostage families. One mother saying she's trembling with fear for her son, still captive in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu authorized the strike after a shooting at a bus stop in Jerusalem Monday that killed 6 Israelis.
These are the same terrorists who planned, terrorist chiefs who planned, launched, and celebrated the horrific massacres of October 7th.
Israeli forces are once again stepping up military operations in Gaza, forcing beleaguered Gaza City residents to evacuate as President Trump and other world leaders push for a path to peace. The U.S. is pushing a new ceasefire proposal that Israel agreed to and Hamas was reviewing, though voicing skepticism about the terms. The White House says President Trump has now spoken to Israel's prime minister and assured Qatar's top leaders a similar strike will not happen again as we wait to see the fate of negotiations. In Washington, I'm Alice Barr. Back to you.
Right now, first aid training is underway, not for physical injuries, but for mental health in response to the shooting at Annunciation. The first session taking place at the Fairview Community Health and Wellness Hub in St. Paul. It's meant to teach people how to handle the aftermath of trauma and offers participants the tools to help themselves and others in times of crisis. The 5 pillars of psychological first aid training include promoting physical and emotional safety, providing a sense of calm and comfort, encouraging connection, encouraging self-empowerment, and presenting hope for the future. The 2-hour session was free and offered to all members of the public.
We train them to help provide an appropriate emotional response to loved ones and to community as a whole. And we know that our community needs that right now.
We have communities that are tired and are needing to build resilience. And so, people are just struggling with, seeing their own children and the children that lost their lives as part of that tragedy.
This type of training was developed after Hurricane Katrina in 2005, and it's used in the immediate aftermath of things like natural disasters or major crises. Happening after lunchtime today, a big step aimed at helping people work through mental health issues. A new mental health hospital is about to open its doors in St. Paul. Audrey Russo is in the newsroom now to tell us more about what it has to offer.
This hospital will be run by Fairview Health and Acadia Healthcare, a national for-profit behavioral care provider. Reps with the new facility say it's a state-of-the-art solution to a problem, increasingly preventing patients from getting timely help.
2 blocks away from the state's epicenter of power stands new refuge for Minnesota's vulnerable. Capitol Park Mental Health Hospital opens to the public at the end of the month. 144 new beds for inpatient treatment, critical for a state whose strength is desperately lacking in numbers.
And who is experiencing these delays?
Kara Levin spoke to the author of a Department of Health study.
Where may there be disparities?
Who sounded the alarm last year about mental health patients forced to wait for care. 59% of the time, there wasn't anywhere for them to go.
The most common reasons for discharge delays were associated with a lack of available bed space in a safe setting.
Reps for Capitol Park tell us this setting will offer state-of-the-art amenities to its patients, including a gymnasium and outdoor gardens. But some question if the facility's impact is weakened based on who will benefit.
We're kind of in a wait-and-see position.
Sue Abderholden is executive director of Minnesota's chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. She's worried the hospital's for-profit, psychiatric-only model could hamper some patients' ability to pay.
They can't actually access Medicaid like any other hospital would, so there are restrictions to that.
Concerned the people most in need of help have the least buying power.
We'll see how it all plays out.
I reached out to Capitol Park reps. They sent me a statement saying all patients will have access to care, regardless of their ability to pay. They cited several ways to get federal funding for mental health care through Medicaid, and most of these include waivers that states' programs must apply for. Back to you.
Do stick with us. More news and weather are coming up after the break.